This is for you. If your heart still aches for someone you had to let go, even when love hadn't run out, but time had. If you're a Cancer, born between the 21st of June and the 22nd of July, you know what it means to love with your whole soul? To carry someone in the deepest chambers of your heart, even after they've walked away. Or worse, even when you were the one who had to walk. And this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about a sacred moment in the Cancerian life. The moment they realize letting go is also an act of love. Tonight, we enter the quiet, aching space between holding on and setting free. We'll walk with the Eight of Cups, feel the hush of the star, and find renewal in the transformation of death. Because this isn't the end. This is the becoming. So, take a deep breath. Light a candle if you must. This is not a farewell letter. It's a return to yourself. Let's begin. The love that stayed too long. Cancer doesn't fall in love quickly, but when they do, it's as if their soul wraps around another like the tide embraces the shore. They remember small details others forget. They care when no one else notices. They fight for the connection even when it's fraying at the seams. And sometimes, they stay longer than they should. Not because they're weak, but because they believe in what was once sacred. They hold on to the echo of laughter, to the weight of shared memories, to promises that felt eternal in the moment they were made. But here's the truth they struggle to accept. Love, even the purest kind, can outgrow the space it once thrived in. And Cancers, you try to fix it. You give more. You soften. You compromise. You shrink just to keep them comfortable. Until one day, you realize you've been holding the pieces of something already broken and bleeding in silence. It's not your fault. You didn't fail. Sometimes love ends not with betrayal, but with quiet exhaustion. And that's where the Eight of Cups walks in, a figure turning away from something they still love because their soul knows staying would mean losing themselves. This is not the beginning of your heartbreak. It's the beginning of your healing. The moment you knew. There's always a moment. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't break the sky open or shatter the earth. It's quiet, like a sigh at midnight, like a single tear falling on a pillow you no longer share. For Cancer, that moment comes not when the other person walks away, but when you realize you're the only one still holding on. Maybe it was a message left on read. Maybe it was the way their voice changed. Maybe it was how they stopped asking how your heart was doing, or how they smiled, but their eyes didn't reach for you anymore. You didn't cry right away. You tried to rationalize it. They're just busy. It's just a phase. I can love us enough for both of us. But your soul knew, and that's what hurts the most. Because for Cancer, love isn't just a feeling, it's a home. And now that home feels cold, empty, silent. But here's the truth. Even when it stings, the moment you knew was also the moment you began to wake up, not to the pain, but to your own worth. And somewhere inside, beneath the heartbreak, a quiet whisper began. You deserve more than this. That whisper will grow. And when it does, you'll remember that walking away isn't weakness. It's sacred strength. You stayed longer than you should have. You knew they stopped showing up. You knew the laughter wasn't the same. You knew your eyes were beginning to search for signs of affection that used to be freely given. But still you stayed. Because Cancer hearts don't walk away when things get hard. They try harder. They give more. They love with a kind of softness that feels like a promise even when it's breaking them apart. You stayed because you believed in them. Because you remembered the way they held you once. The way they made you feel like you were the only soul in the room. And you kept trying to revive that version of them, even when they were already gone in spirit. You stayed because you thought that was love. But here's the part no one tells you. Staying when your soul is starving isn't love, it's self-abandonment. You watered a garden that no longer had seeds. You poured from a cup that no one helped you refill. You gave them grace, forgiveness, second chances, while giving yourself the leftovers of your own light. And I know, you stayed because you thought maybe, just maybe, they would turn around and choose you again. But instead, you learned something much more sacred. That sometimes the bravest thing a Cancer can do is let go, even when your hands are shaking, even when your heart is still whispering their name. Because staying out of loyalty to someone who no longer sees your worth isn't love. It's slow self-destruction. And you were born for more than that. The day you chose yourself for the first time, there was no loud applause. No parade. No one handing you a trophy for finally walking away. It was just you, standing quietly in a room where love once lived, and choosing to close the door behind you. But Cancer, do you know what kind of strength that takes? To walk away from the very thing you once prayed for? To silence the part of your heart that still whispers, maybe they'll come back. To finally say, I deserve better than breadcrumbs and silence. That was the day you stopped betraying yourself. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving you just a little bit more. It didn't feel brave in the moment. It felt like collapse. Like the ocean finally breaking its own tide. Like a mother letting go of the child she raised inside her heart. But it was bravery. It was your soul, tired of begging to be seen, finally turning inward and saying, I see you, I've got you, and I'm not leaving. You didn't need them to validate your worth anymore. You remembered that your love was never the problem. Your capacity to give deeply, wholly, vulnerably, that was your superpower, not your downfall. And slowly, pain gave way to clarity. You were not hard to love. You just tried to bloom in someone's winter. The moment you realized you were healing, it didn't happen all at once. There was no grand revelation, no cinematic moment where everything made sense. But one morning, you woke up and their name didn't ache the way it used to. You passed by the cafe you once sat in together and didn't feel the need to cross the street. A song came on, the one that used to tear you open, but this time, you just listened. You didn't cry. You didn't flinch. You just breathed. That's how healing begins for you, Cancer. Softly, without asking permission, like spring returning to a forest that forgot it knew how to bloom. You began noticing your own laughter again. Not the forced one you wore around friends, but the one that bubbled up when you were alone, watching something silly, or remembering the way your younger self used to dream. You started reclaiming your routines. Lit candles just for yourself, cleaned the corner of your room where grief used to sleep, and in that silence you found yourself. The version of you that existed before the heartbreak, and the version you were becoming because of it. It wasn't about forgetting them. It was about remembering you. The way your heart still longs deeply, the way you love your people with unshakable devotion, the way you give, not because you're weak, but because your soul was born from the ocean's depth. Cancer, healing didn't erase your past. It just softened its grip. And in its place, a new kind of love started blooming, one that finally included you. Opening the door to the new world, you stood at the edge of something unfamiliar. Not a cliff, but a garden. A place where life continued to bloom without needing their presence to make it beautiful. At first, you hesitated. Your fingers still carried the memory of their touch. Your voice still echoed the way you once said their name in the dark. But this new world, it wasn't asking you to forget. It was asking you to live. And that's when you took your first step. You went out again, not to escape the past, but to finally breathe in something different. You allowed someone to make you laugh. Not the kind of laughter that tries to cover the pain, but the kind that sneaks up on you and reminds you of who you are underneath the sorrow. Cancer, for the first time in so long, you stopped explaining your scars. You stopped apologizing for the tenderness in your eyes. You simply let the world see you, as you are now, still soft, still strong, but somehow more whole. You reconnected with people who spoke your language of emotion, people who didn't fear your depth, but cherished it. You began to create again. You wrote, you painted, you cooked meals that tasted like warmth, and let your home be filled with scents that felt like safety. You saw beauty in others, not as replacements, but as companions on this new chapter. And most importantly, you gave yourself permission to hope, not in the way that clings, but in the way that flows, gentle, open, ready. Cancer, this wasn't just about surviving heartbreak. It was about walking through it and realizing there's a version of you who knows how to bloom even after the fire, becoming your own safe place. You no longer wait by the door for someone to come back. You no longer whisper into the silence hoping it will answer with a familiar voice. Because now, Cancer, you've become the answer. You've become the home you once searched for in someone else. And oh, how powerful that is. You wake up and don't need a text to feel seen. You pour your coffee, water your plant, brush your hair, and in those simple, quiet acts, you are telling your heart, I am here. I've got you. You still remember them, but they don't hold the same weight. They drift through your mind like clouds, not storms. You've cried the ocean, and now you sail on it. What used to be an open wound is now a softened scar. It doesn't throb when the wind changes. It simply reminds you of what you survived. And for once, you're not desperate for someone to fill the space beside you, because you've filled it with your own light, your own presence, your own peace. Cancer, you learn that love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes, the most honest love you can give is the kind you give to yourself. After the world walks away, you protect your softness now, not with walls, but with wisdom. You're no longer afraid of being alone, because you've discovered the difference between loneliness and solitude. One wounds, the other restores. And now you sit in your own company, and it feels whole. Cancer, you are no longer just healing. You are healed enough to live. When the light returns, there's a moment, Cancer, when the grief softens enough that you start to see light again, not as a threat, but as an invitation. It doesn't come with a trumpet. It's quiet, almost shy, like sunlight slipping through the curtains on a morning you thought you wouldn't survive. And at first, you resist it. You've grown so used to surviving, to bracing for the next wave, to holding your breath, that the idea of joy feels like betrayal. But then, something changes. You hear yourself laugh, really laugh, and it startles you. You catch your reflection, and for the first time in months, you don't look haunted. You look present. A stranger smiles at you, and you don't flinch. You smile back. You don't trust it yet. Of course not. Hope has burned you before. But even so, you follow that sliver of light. Not all at once. Not blindly, but gently, like dipping your toes back into the sea. After nearly drowning, you start saying yes to things you used to love. You pick up the pen. You dance in your room. You text a friend just to say you're thinking of them, not because you need saving, but because you have something to give. And slowly, like spring returning to a frostbitten forest, you begin to feel alive. Not because someone came back, not because the pain is gone, but because you came back, because you chose to stay, not in the past, but in this moment where the light is. Cancer, you're not rebuilding the old version of yourself. You're becoming someone new, someone stronger, softer, wiser, braver. And this time, you're not afraid of the light. You are ready to walk toward it. The chapter after healing. So, Cancer, what happens after the healing? What happens when the storms subside and the silence no longer hurts? You begin to live not to survive, but to truly live. You notice things you once missed. The warmth of your coffee mug, the way sunlight dances on your floor, the sound of your own heartbeat, not racing from anxiety, but steady, calm, yours. You no longer search for signs that something's wrong. You no longer replay the past to make sense of it. You no longer shrink to make others feel comfortable. You start choosing yourself, not because you're selfish, but because you finally understand what it means to belong to you. The world hasn't changed much. People still come and go. Some days are heavy. Some memories still sting. But you, dear Cancer, have changed. You've stopped waiting for permission to be whole. You've stopped apologizing for feeling deeply. You've stopped proving your worth to those who never saw it. Now, you plant new seeds. You dream again without fear. You write new stories without needing to explain the old ones. You give your love carefully, intentionally, Not because you're broken, but because your heart is full. And when the night falls, you no longer fear the dark, because you've made peace with your shadows. You've befriended your silence. You've become your own home. This chapter, Cancer, is not about endings. It's about beginnings. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet ones. The kind you feel in your bones. The kind that whisper, "You made it, so take a breath." Place your hand over your heart and say it out loud. "I'm still here. I'm still becoming. And I am so, so proud of me." This is your life now. Not perfect, not painless, but beautifully, unapologetically yours.